Hey, this is Dennis, and welcome to another episode of the Grounded Reason podcast, where tech and politics collide.
Yeah, and I think, Dennis, this is a good opportunity to talk about our little rebrand.
Yeah, I think we're going to rebrand the show. And when I say rebrand the show, it really doesn't mean change the show.
It's not going to change.
It's the same show. It just gives us an excuse to not feel guilty when we decide to talk about... Because every time we bring up, I don't know, we did the episode recently. We did the episode on automation and jobs.
And we've done net neutrality in the past.
Yeah, and like last week we talked about how, like, you know, the shenanigans with net neutrality, and it kind of relates to what's going on in Washington. So instead of having to put a disclaimer every time Joel and I go off on one of those episodes, just expect them every once in a while.
Well, and the other thing that's nice is for, you know, the occasional new user, because now, for all of you loyal listeners that have been there for a long time, they're not going to be as, you know, good looking or as, you know, bright as you people.
Right.
But for the new people, we'll still love them
currently, because I mean,
okay, but it will be more descriptive for them,
and a lot of
we do get into those.
Yeah, and a lot of the, I mean, the rebrand is a bit because we got a really good response from, you know, those episodes where we kind of branch out a little bit. So we're probably going to be doing a little more of those. But I mean, let's be honest, we've really kind of ran the gamut on cord cutting.
Yeah, and
there's more to come.
Yeah, don't get us wrong. When news comes up on cord cutting,
we'll be right there.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, we've covered all the basics in the back catalog. When technology changes, definitely new episodes will happen. Or when news hits, new episodes will happen, and they'll be covering cord cutting. But you know, we're also going to be discussing a little bit of internet policy, you know, internet culture, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And honestly, to refer back to the Christopher, right? He actually, in one of his comments, I believe it was him, he said, you know, like, I like when you guys branch out into the various other subtopics. Like, how many times can we talk, you know, or touch on, you know, cord cutting? Like,
right.
You know, when new things come out, we'll get all over it. But until then, there's a lot going on in the broader internet.
Yep, it's all an ecosystem.
Yeah, and you know, all of the policy decisions like net neutrality and what's going to happen with how various government and corporate institutions respond to automation, they all impact the things we think about tactically, like cord cutting.
Right.
Like cord cutting is where it hits us in the wallet right now.
Right. And the whole point of Grounded Reason is to kind of like, my idea originally was to usher people through technology, because technology is really, that's going to be the catalyst for change from here on out. Every, you know, major societal change or even small changes that will affect your day to day on, you know, or your wallet, for instance, it's all going to be technologically based. And the whole reason for, you know, Grounded Reason is to kind of, you know, help people through all that.
Yeah, I mean, like, human beings, going back as far as it goes, right, have always been animals that use technology to make ourselves more productive and happier and etc., right? And the internet in particular is, I believe, and I think Dennis does as well, the biggest multiplier for that in our history.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've always been social beings, and the internet is a way that, you know, now it's just one big community.
Yeah. It diffuses information and various ideas faster than anything ever had.
Right.
And in fact, there's one of the things, I'm trying to remember the actual numbers, but so just bear with me. These will be rough. But the idea was that prior to the telegraph, like the west coast of the country got the first inaugural of the president, you know, weeks after it happened.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Pony
totally.
Express type stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there used to be famous on the East Coast used to be a thing.
Yeah.
Like
It
that's
was
the
separate.
It was
right?
totally separate. Like if you were famous out west, you might not be famous east.
Yeah, I don't know why this popped into my head, but let's use this as an example. I forget his name, but the guy who sang Gangnam Style.
Psy,
Right, there you go. That's a
the guy that broke YouTube.
Yeah, the man who broke YouTube.
Right.
That is a South Korean pop star who is singing entirely in Korean.
Yep,
And
global hit.
he is a household name all over the world. And that's just
Except for Joel, because Joel didn't know. It was
yeah,
Psy.
well, everyone else in the world. But I am like, seriously, I'm going to go read Hayek when I get home. I'm the least cool guy you're going to meet. So, like, all I mean to say is that, like, the internet spreads every idea, good or ill, as fast as, we can conceive of right now.
Right. And really, that's kind of where the show, that's kind of our wheelhouse. And that's where I kind of want to.
Just talking about that.
Exactly. But so last week, we were talking about some shady tactics
On previous episodes.
Exactly. Last week on Grounded Reason podcast, we were talking about some shady tactics the ISPs were using in the battle over net neutrality.
I might have had a couple choice words about it.
Yeah, we talked about how they were ripping like off the Washington politician playbook.
Yeah.
On a lot of things.
Yeah.
And we pointed to some like massive problems that were just straight up lies in like the GOP healthcare plan.
Yep.
And compared that to, what the ISPs were doing. Well, that episode aired on Monday.
Yeah.
And on Monday, all hell broke loose with the GOP healthcare plan. For instance, like, okay, I want to go through this a little bit because I find it very intriguing.
Yeah.
Like, the whole thing was like a soap opera.
Well, and we are right outside the DC Beltway. We're 50 miles away from the Washington Monument. So, like,
not even, like 30.
Something like that. So, bear with us a tiny bit for getting a little wonky, right?
Yeah,
like,
and I don't know, but you can, if you don't think it's interesting, let us know in a review or comments.
Yeah.
So while the GOP leaders were having dinner with the President Trump, Senators Moran and Lee joined Senators Collins and Paul and said that they weren't going to vote for the repeal and replace bill.
Now, here's what's really important about that statement is that the Republican Senate could afford to give up 3 votes,
right,
for them to be able to pass. And the only reason they could do that, right, the only reason they could give up 3 was they have 52 Republican senators. And so they could lose 2, and Pence, Vice President Pence, could break the tie as long as the bill was deemed budget neutral.
Right, exactly. So you're like, well, why did 2 go at the same time? And it's really interesting because they did this. Well, like this was like a surprise attack. I mean, because like McConnell and like the leaders of the GOP are like just hanging out, having like a succotash dinner with President Trump. They literally were having succotash. I'm not kidding.
Oh God, I had not heard that.
I know. And
suffering succotash.
I know. So they're eating with Trump, and then out of nowhere, Moran and Lee basically just say they're not voting for the thing.
Well,
now why that's intriguing though is Lee is kind of like the hardcore conservative, and Moran is more of kind of like a rank and file. I wouldn't quite say
he's not a moderate, but he's kind of a middle of road current Republican.
Right, but he usually votes with the leadership.
Yeah.
He's like most people have never even heard of him because he's just like he just doesn't make a lot of noise.
No. And I find this very interesting because they figured out, and maybe this is where you're going.
Yeah. I basically like it's to give. It kind of shows of a deeper rebellion within the Republican caucus or like the Republican senators, because Lee will give cover to any hardcore conservatives that disagree with repealing and replacing the healthcare bill, while Moran kind of gave cover to any people left of that.
Yeah. And what it looks like is they decided to vote as a... All right, so let's back up for a second. So there's 52 senators that are Republican.
Right.
2 had already come out. I forget their names, but 2 had already come out.
Collins and Paul. Paul
Paul
did it because, okay, here's the
Rand
thing.
Paul.
Yeah, Rand Paul did it because Kentucky is like
Uber conservative.
Well, no, not only that, but they're hardcore baked into Obamacare.
Yeah.
So Paul,
that's true.
Paul's playing this game where he's going to say the bill's not conservative enough, but really he's voting against it because it's going to hurt tons of people.
Because they took the
in
Medicaid
Kentucky.
expansion.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's really the issue there.
So, and then who's the other?
Collins, because Collins,
Collins
is like an institution all to herself.
Well, she came out and said that if Planned Parenthood was gutted, which the bill did, she was going to vote against.
She did say that, yeah.
And so those were 2 that were baked into the cake, but that still gave them 50 going into this dinner,
right?
With Pence breaking the tie. So the political calculus that's been floating around like the Washington establishment, and I'm no expert, but this is just what I've been reading, is basically...
And we'll get to the tech later on, but I just kind of want to cover this
we're getting there.
Because it's just, to me, this is fascinating.
It's just intrigue, right? Palace intrigue. So basically what's been going around in the political newspapers and so on is that nobody wanted to be the first Republican senator to make the bill no longer like passable.
Exactly.
So what they figured out was, and it's Lee and Moran, right?
Yeah.
That decided, well, if we vote as a block, we can save our hides from
neither
our
one
local
did it.
constituents, but neither one can take the brunt of the blame for killing the bill.
Okay. So on Monday, all these 2 senators listened to our podcasts and and decided to just like, Dennis and Joel are right. We're just going to kill this thing.
And Senator Lee and Senator Moran, I just want to say, we appreciate you listening. You're, again, very handsome and intelligent. Right. So keep it up.
So then on, so the majority leader, McConnell, which shocked me because he's usually like a really tactical, like level-headed dude. Basically, like lost his mind.
He straight up loses his shit, and it was awesome.
Said,
like if you could see my 250-pound pear-shaped body do the happy dance, that's what happened when I heard about Mitch McConnell's reaction.
And he basically said he's going to blow up the whole thing, and he basically said that they're going to vote on the repeal period act that they passed.
Yeah.
And they passed it in 2015, and it was one of those bills where they passed because they knew Obama would veto it.
Yeah.
So there's really no policy consideration at all in this bill.
And it would throw 32 million with an M people off health insurance right away.
Right away.
So
and double premiums.
Oh my God.
And and this is the scary part. 3/4 of people, not just uninsured people,
just humans in the United States,
probably would not buy the plans that would be available under that. So of non if you don't get insurance through your employer.
He pulled what I like to call a Cartman, which is screw you guys, I'm going home.
Right. He
just took his ball and walked off.
He's like,
field.
fine. And he did this. He was like, fine. He's like, if you guys want to do this, then we're just gonna put this full on just repeal, no replace bill. Yeah. Basically repeal and go F yourself. Kind of bill on the table.
Are we saying F yourself now? We're not saying fuck anymore?
I didn't want that's trademarked by Pod Save America.
Oh. So. Yeah. Touche. Sorry guys.
So because they have t-shirts that say that. So
yeah, they're good t-shirts.
They are. So on he throws this on the like basically now what was on the table is just straight up repeal, period.
Yeah.
The next day on Tuesday, Senators Murkowski, Collins, and Capito of West Virginia, and Murkowski's Alaska, and Collins is Maine, said that they're not going to vote for repeal. Like, period. They're just not.
Which is the
gonna do it.
political equivalent of he should go fuck himself.
Right, exactly. So then it's just like right there, 49, bill killed.
Yeah.
Like on Tuesday. Like, boom, boom.
Just done.
Right. At that point, Trump's livid.
Yeah.
And he calls like all the Republicans over for lunch. And
I'm sure that was a delightful affair.
well, the funny part is, and this is the part that like people, Trump doesn't really read any, like he has no idea what's in any of these bills.
Nope.
And I mean, I know you're like, yeah, okay, you're like liberal, whatever. But no, honestly, like he does not.
So there's a difference. Let me make a distinction really quick, right? Like, so President Obama was considered particularly scholarly and deliberative, so he actually read most of these
But I wouldn't
things.
expect. I wouldn't hold anybody to Obama's.
So hold on.
Okay.
I'm getting there. So let's go back to Bush 43. Bush 43 was not considered particularly scholarly.
Actually, no. A lot of people made fun of him for
not being. I'll say it that way. But I never felt like he was uninformed.
No.
I believed his aides had thoroughly read the documents and informed him, and he absorbed that material.
No, it felt like people were running the country and knew what policy was happening.
I never thought I would be saying, and I'm pretty lefty, I never thought I would be saying, like, hey, 43 seemed like he was running a tight ship. But, like, now I'm kind of thinking
even then, I would say I would disagree with the policy.
With the direction of the ship.
With the direction, but I wouldn't sit there and say that they have no idea what's going on around them.
No. That's actually a very good point. They completely seemed informed.
Yeah.
They just had policy decisions
This is
I
different.
disagreed with. This is ill-informed.
Yes, like and
or
it's
uninformed.
It's obvious because because he said the problem with the bill is that they haven't explained it to the American people.
No, I'm pretty sure I've watched a lot of the town halls. I'm pretty sure the American people are well informed of what the bill contains.
And he said that they need to get together and tell the American people how great this repeal and replace bill is. Okay, and the best part about that is right after the lunch when he said that, the CBO released their report because they actually already, rated this bill. And they said what Joel said earlier, that they would leave 32 million people without insurance and they would double the average insurance premium. Right after Trump's like, oh, well, we just need to tell people how good this bill is.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And it's one of those things where I just wonder, like, all right, with any organization, no matter its size, right? Whoever's in charge, you expect not to be in the details of everything, but you expect them to have advisors around them who can advise, and they take that into consideration and they make decisions based on it.
Right.
Like, certainly someone should have been able to say, no, sir, the American people know they're coming out in droves.
They really are.
Right, like
this bill is not popular.
This bill is. I think last week I said something to the effect of, "This bill is less popular than chlamydia." Right, like it's
and I said it's nuclear gonorrhea.
Yeah. It's really unpopular.
It's super unpopular.
Right, like, and so
it's like in the teens of like people that support this thing.
Yeah, like almost anything would poll higher than this.
Yeah, and again, the ACA has problems.
Oh yeah, lots. But
Joel and I mean, I'm speaking for Joel here, but I think he would agree that we just want the Congress to kind of work like it's supposed to work in the Constitution, and maybe just kind of fix some of the problems.
Yeah,
and work together. And just
I completely agree.
Fix it.
And I'm no constitutional scholar, and I know a lot of us these days like to pose like we are. I'm just, I won't pretend to do that, but my like layman's reading of things is that the founding fathers wanted us to, like, iterate on things, to steal an IT term,
Yeah.
right? To where, they got incrementally better, right? Like, so.
And it's a sharing of ideas versus various ideologies.
Right.
Thinking that, if you take a little bit from here and a little bit from there, you'll probably get the best idea.
We'll get the 80% solution.
Right.
People will be generally happy.
Or the best idea you can come up with. Right?
Yeah, and that's
not
great.
The perfect idea.
Right?
But.
Like, so that's kind of what I'm hoping for here. I'm just not seeing it. And so that's kind of my stance with this.
But some senators are saying that. To McCain's, to McCain's credit, who unfortunately had a blood clot issue, he had to go, which actually kind of threw a wrench into this as well, because then they lost another vote.
So I just posted this out.
But he said that, it's time to just like kind of sit down and get back to normal business and like work together on a bipartisan solution.
So this is like breaking news, and I can't get into it very deeply because I haven't read the article, but he had a blood clot, which is why he went in, but apparently Senator McCain has brain cancer.
Oh, I did not. Did that just hit?
Yeah, that's within the last hour.
Wow.
And it's an aggressive tumor that was surgically removed. So, thoughts and prayers go out.
Yeah.
For Senator.
Yeah, because we're recording this on Wednesday night. So,
you guys, by the time you hear this, will probably have more information than we do on that. But, so with Senator McCain out, there's been a lot of calls for like, hey, maybe we should pause on some of these, various like voting.
That's what they thought. They thought it would be a slow week, which is why like the Republican leadership got together with Trump and they're having a dinner. They're talking about things. And Monday, they just like Moran and Lee just blew it up. And
Mitch McConnell then decided to force the issue.
Right.
So.
And now it's but they had a meeting today, Wednesday, and Trump is adamant about pushing this thing. So what I think is going to happen is they're just going to vote on it, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
So,
and
we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know.
So with the Trump with healthcare kind of like in the down, like kind of like I don't want to say down the tubes because who knows, but in limbo. They're moving on to other things, and specifically net neutrality. Oddly enough,
President Trump got on the bully pulpit today about it.
I know, and which was kind of surprising because he didn't seem to really. Jeet Pie was kind of just running the show, and there wasn't really any input.
Well, it's kind of a nuanced issue.
Well, it is because the FCC is supposed to be an independent, or commission.
So,
to be fair, Obama got involved a bit too.
Sure.
During the net neutrality issue the first time around.
With any commission, it is not unusual for a president to, I would say, like, express their opinion one way or the other, right? Like, so that in and of itself is not the unusual piece. The unusual piece is that President Trump has historically, like, if you look at his record on what he's discussed, been almost mute on the topic entirely. He's like said almost nothing. In fact, if you go way back to one of our episodes, I guess probably in the September time period, I'm not sure, we were discussing the two candidates at the time, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and, now President Donald Trump. And, President Trump, as far as internet policy in general, had only one statement he'd ever issued, no official policy released by his staff.
It was 3 years ago.
Yeah, and it was a tweet that had several
I got it right here if you want
conflated ideas. I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, he said, okay, quote unquote, Obama's attack on the internet is another top-down power grab. Net neutrality is the fairness doctrine and will target conservative media.
Which there's a lot to unpack.
There's a lot to unpack. First off, okay, the fairness doctrine was basically an old law that was overruled that said that they had to give equal time to, I think it was either ideas or candidates.
I think it was ideas.
I think, yeah. So if they're going to cover a topic, they got to give ideas to both sides. And I think it fell on like a free speech prop issue.
So to be clear, and for more thorough analysis of it, we discussed it in that previous episode. But to be clear, what Dennis is saying is that particular topic that the president is discussing there was overruled and was no longer in effect.
Right. And not only that, but it's like it has nothing to do with any of that.
No.
Because like no one's sitting there listening to the bits and saying, like, you know, like they're not going to sit there and say,
it's not about content. It's about providers.
It is. It's about, it's not
or
about,
I should say net neutrality is not about content. It's about providers. And
it's about all content being equal.
Exactly.
It's not the inverse of we're going to regulate this content and not that content. It's just saying like there's no everything is equal. Like just let it go. Let it all be open. And he's kind of twisting it into being more of a way for the FCC to target certain
conservative media.
Right, which is really the thing that we're afraid of is corporations being able to do that.
Well, it's exactly what at least I've expressed a couple of times. One of my biggest fears is both, you know, major corporations being able to exert like outsized influence over what we all hear and see and so on.
Yes.
Because of their control over the various, you know, ISPs, right? Like, so the ISPs themselves or their, you know, other business.
No, I mean, in reality, it's a bit of a stretch. Because, I mean, not to say they do have the power to do that. They definitely do. But what is like an immediate concern is profit motive and constraining things like streaming video. Because streaming video competes directly with their cable video service.
Right. So again, to clarify there, like, so the freedom of speech threats are more long-term, insidious threats. So like you have the corporate concerns there, and you have the fact that power regarding like throttling and so on would be consolidated. There would be no legal recourse to go against. So the state would be able to manipulate it easily. That's all long-term. Dennis is absolutely right in that the short-term immediate effect is that the ISPs can remove price competition from the market.
Yeah, instantly if they want.
Yeah. And
have.
They'd be foolish.
When they had the opportunity, they did.
They'd be foolish as entities not to, right? Like I do not expect corporations to act ethically, right? Like they are not. I disagree with Citizens United. Corporations are not people.
No.
Right? They are collections of people, and collections of people act differently than people do.
Oh, we can do a whole episode on the issue with how corporation law works these days.
Throw my microphone. I don't.
Well, I mean, when they first started, it was like, what, 20 years? You can only incorporate for 20 years, and then it had to dissolve.
I mean, this is your microphone, so I guess I won't throw it.
But okay, we can't. We can't go down that rabbit hole. But okay, so Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was, I think, now the new Sean Spicer, because they were like tired of seeing Sean Spicer being like made fun of on Saturday Night Live.
I'm assuming he's somewhere in Romania just wandering.
Well, first off, Sarah Huckabee Sanders sounds like. Did you ever see that movie Explorers?
Yeah.
Okay. Like
a long time ago.
It's like, okay, it's the movie. Like I think it's Ethan Hawke's first movie.
Might be right.
Yeah, but for all you youngins out there, it's basically like these three kids build a spaceship and they go into space because this alien sends them a signal and they go on this alien ship. Well, the alien only knows our culture because he watched television.
Yeah.
Sarah Huckabee Sanders sounds like that alien watched nothing but like politics shows and wanted to like make herself like a politician and decided to like make an amalgam of like Sarah Palin, Mike Huckabee, and Bernie Sanders like What is that?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Like, I'll get all the demographics if I make
Sarah Huckabee Sanders. Is there a more political name than that? It's just like what
unless the name was like,
right. It's like
Clinton, Obama,
right.
Trump,
I'm Bush, Gore, Reagan, Clinton.
Right? Yeah. My name is Bush, Gore, Reagan, Clinton.
So Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she said the previous administration, because she came out and this is the big statement that the administration made. She said the previous administration went about this the wrong way by imposing rules on ISPs through FCC's Title II rulemaking power. And then she went on to say, we support the FCC chair's effort to review and consider rolling back these rules and believe the best way to get fair rules for everyone is for Congress to take action and create regulatory and economic certainty.
Okay, so
there's a bit of a silver lining here.
There is. And, can you remind me of the Senator
Thune?
Yeah. Thank you. North Dakota? Is that right? I can't remember. Somewhere
I'd have to look
out that direction. But anyways, Senator Thune, who is a reasonable person,
fairly reasonable, yes,
at least on this topic, has been arguing for this, and we covered this in the previous episode, that, hey, you know what? Let's take this out of the commission's hands in terms of determining what the broad strokes of the policy would be.
Right.
Let's crystallize this in law, and then ask the FCC to enforce that law.
Yeah, well, this makes me nervous a bit. I'll get to that later in the episode, but it does. I mean, there's reasons why this kind of scares me too.
Yeah, okay. So
here's the thing. Title II, while it's not the absolute perfect situation, currently right now it works.
It does work.
And if FCC were ever to overstep their bounds on Title II, which is possible, I'm not completely negating what Ajit Pai says. Sure. It's completely possible that if you got some kind of FCC tyrant in there, that they could run ramshot and do all kind of price controlling and things like that under Title II. That is a granted far-fetched possibility, but it's possible.
Well, first of all, it would immediately end up in the courts, but
it would.
Nevertheless.
And at that point, then Congress can step in and make a law. Right now, there's not a problem.
So I tend to agree. But, let's assume we lived in a hypothetical world where there were adults in Congress. Okay? If we did, then I think what Senator Thune is suggesting is actually not so bad, because it would add a lot of stability to the industry.
There's a lot of lobby money in Congress from the ISPs.
I know. I'm dealing in my hypothetical unicorn and rainbow world, but just bear with me. So in that world, it would be nice to have a reasonable set of laws to establish guidelines around net neutrality, because the concern, and this is what Senator Thune points out, is that exactly what has happened from the Wheeler to the Pai administration is going to keep happening.
It will.
That if the White House keeps switching every 4 to 8 years, and you get there
is a law against that already.
Well, I know, and that's what we're resting. Well, why don't you explain that? But let me just say this. What Dennis is about to get into is at least part of what he and I are resting our hopes on.
Yeah, honestly, I think it's because if there's a law, and I can't remember the exact term, the exact name of the law, but it basically says agencies can't make administrative law that is arbitrary and capricious. And really what that's saying is you can't just... The FCC is the FCC, and just because it changes heads, the figurative mind of the FCC should not change.
Right. Think of the FCC as an aggregate of opinions.
Yes.
Right? And there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that work there. I don't know how many offhand. But, and that leads to a collective opinion.
Right.
Right? And that collective opinion of a whole bunch of experts is X.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just because the person who leads that organization switches doesn't mean that X becomes Y.
Right. And
Right.
the way they test this law is that they got to give the whole like arbitrary and capricious wording is basically saying they have to give real evidence that a policy change is needed.
Well, and that's one reason why the public comment period is such a big deal.
Yeah, which just closed.
I thought it was still
Monday
open for,
closed.
Oh, but there were 9 million comments logged, right?
9 million.
Which is a record breaker.
Yep.
Now, there were, by some estimates from what I could read, some roundabout million bot-looking related comments.
It was quite a few. It was more than that. But I mean, there's like, but a lot of the bots were. I mean, there were some on both sides.
Yeah,
but majority,
it was about 500,000 is what I saw.
Well, I saw there was more bots from the anti side.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. From what I saw.
trust your stats better than mine.
But I mean, to get back to Reagan, Clinton, Gore Bush. I mean, Sarah Huckabee Sanders,
Palin,
Mike Huckabee, Bernie Sanders. She when she said the words she said consider rolling back, like that it's still in doubt. Like
right.
I think the administration is hedging a bit here because originally they were kind of the transition team. Trump's transition team was all gung ho about moving all this power over to the FTC. And the reason for that is the FTC really can only act in cases of monopoly.
Right.
And while there are regional monopolies, those are usually due to state issues.
Right.
Where the state's made some kind of a special deal with an ISP. There really isn't. It depends on how they define that market.
Yeah. So just as a review on some other stuff we've said, sorry, let me make sure I got this right. It's the FTC, Federal Trade Commission, and the Department of Justice. They rule on all of these antitrust related issues.
Right.
It's
Section 5 of the FTC.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and Department of Justice has an equivalent. So they kind of call the ball in the air depending on what the industry is and who has the most expertise. But the trick with all of that is, like Dennis was saying, is how you define the market. And because the ISP market on its surface looks like it's got a fair amount of competition because there's multiple players, right? It could be interpreted easily if you weren't thinking about it. Hey, there's lots of competition. But because everyone gets their internet service from a local provider, those local markets tend to be almost entirely monopolistic.
Yes. And to make it all hinge on antitrust, essentially says if you have an ISP that isn't a monopoly, it's okay for them to throttle block.
Yeah.
Because
that's exactly right.
That's really what it is. It's like, so
it ends up being a pretty like rough bet from a consumer's perspective that things will work out in your favor, right? Like, it's a way to deregulate the whole industry. It absolutely is.
That's all. That
move is a disaster.
It's a shell game.
Yeah.
And then that was the original plan. The fact that now that the White House is talking about working this through Congress tells me that they're second guessing.
Right. I think there's definitely so based on everything we just talked about with the healthcare bill, and we don't need to get back into that, but they've exhausted a fair amount of political capital on unpopular stuff.
Right.
So far.
And this, which I got some polling numbers here,
is remarkably
I was shocked.
Let's hear
them. So why I think they're turning around here is a poll by, and this was a late June poll by Civis Analytics. It's like a data science firm, and it was on behalf of a DC-based consulting firm called Friedman. I just want to tell you guys that because I want to, give you the sources.
Yeah.
Per last week's episode. 77% want to keep the existing net neutrality rules in place. 77. While 81% agree that ISPs should not be able to block, throttle, or charge extra for preferred access to consumers.
Right. So that means there's a 4% delta in
but the people that actually know what net neutrality means, because
Exactly.
both of those things are net neutrality.
Yeah.
That means the public is fairly well informed on what this is.
Dennis,
That's why I was shocked.
4 out of 5 people. You can't get 4 out of 5 dentists to agree on, like this toothpaste will work better than that toothpaste, right? Like it's insane.
And this is what I think is happening. I think the gambit was made that this is a technical thing dealing with the internet.
No one will pay attention.
And no one will pay attention, or Americans are too stupid to understand what it means. But this poll right here tells us that Americans understand what it means.
Yeah. Yeah, so as much flack as people generally give the American public about, I don't know, all sorts of stuff, right? So an issue like this, when they're like, it's really in jeopardy, right? Like it's not a fiddling with the rules. It's a gutting of the rules.
It is, yeah.
The American public goes and either acts out on the fact that they were informed already, or they go get informed and act out.
Yeah, and I think that's...
And you saw the same thing with the healthcare bill.
Yep. Yeah. People understand this. People are paying attention. People are awake now.
Yeah. And again, it's one of the things that is actually really positive of this period is like, you hear this if you listen to a lot of like political podcasts and, talking heads and read the paper and stuff like that like civic engagement is like all of a sudden cool, right? Like it didn't used to be.
No. Well, it's something you only talk about amongst people you're kind of close with. And I've noticed that like
now it's like water cooler talk.
Yeah. Yeah. There's at work, people talk about this stuff kind of openly now.
Yeah. And people disagree and whatever, but they're talking.
Right.
And that's step one, right? Like step one is let's talk, because most of us, and again, this poll is at least a data point in proving this.
Right.
And there have been previous polls that have been very, very similar.
And let me to kind of like take Joel's point further. One poll isn't the truth.
No.
But
it's a good data point.
It's a good data, and to get a poll that says 80% on a question that's fairly well worded, you're probably you're not going to be. It's definitely over a majority.
You could get. You could put a poll out there of, do you like pepperoni pizza? And I doubt you would get 8 out of 10. You're probably
right.
And I would vote.
I would say who doesn't
in that poll.
That would be a shocking poll for me.
Yeah,
because I would expect it to be 9 out of 10.
I really think 8 out of 10 is a very high bar.
There's a lot of people that like white pizza out there.
Like vegetarians.
I don't understand those people. Hawaiian. What the hell? Sorry if you like the Hawaiian pizza.
So if you never tried this, try jalapeno and pineapple. That's actually really good.
Dude.
It's really good.
I like cheese. I like meat.
I agree. I think
mushrooms are all right.
Hey, we're literally sitting over a pizza shop.
I would say green peppers if they wouldn't give me heartburn occasionally.
I don't want to break the illusion out there for you guys, but this office that we're sitting in is literally over the pizza shop that we get our pizza for both our families every week, right? And the only pizza I get from Scatino's downstairs is pepperoni.
I've had so many Italian cold cuts while I'm in this office.
Oh, yeah. I was going to come over here for dinner and get cold cuts. So.
All right. So, I mean, that was the public at large. What about Trump's base? Because, I mean, really, that's really...
that drives a lot of their motivation.
That drives him. I mean, he really tends to... He kind of writes... I mean, honest appraisal here, he kind of writes off about half the country.
Yeah.
So, let's take a look at Trump's base on this. So, A poll from the Internet and Competitive Networks Association, which was conducted by a GOP research firm, showed that backers of Trump supported net neutrality by a 3-1 margin.
Wow.
The survey from a trade group, Encompass and IMGE. Oh, wait. Yeah, that's another GOP polling firm, a separate GOP polling firm, showed that 75% of Trump voters and 72% of GOP voters said that internet service providers should be prohibited from slowing or blocking websites or video services like Netflix.
So seriously, think about that. The broader public, so that basically
that's
means,
kind of on par with the public at large.
Yeah, if you think about it, what that basically means is that, it's got to be something like, the broader public, or let me say it this way: the non-Trump supporter is probably polling in the mid 80s, and the Trump supporters polling in the lower to mid 70s. Yeah. And you add the two together, you end up at about 80. Like, that's remarkably popular.
But check this out. When they asked the question, and they specifically used the words net neutrality. So if they specifically said, like, do you support net neutrality?
Right.
Just 48% of Trump voters and 51% of Republicans said they do.
Right.
So if you explain the terms, they're for it. But if you use the words net neutrality, it's still a plurality because there's undecided votes in there too.
Sure.
But it's not as big of a number. And if you're curious why, I'm going to read a letter from our friends at the Koch brothers.
Okay.
Their foundation, the Freedom Works, which is basically like a Republican PAC, like they're funders for Republican election, for the Republican side of the political sphere, essentially. I'm going to read you what they sent out to all of their, anyone basically registered Republican or who like kind of signed on to some type of Freedom Works mailing list got this.
Right.
This is how they explained it. And this is going to give Joel an aneurysm.
I don't know.
Okay. Obama's internet takeover was a dream come true for liberals. It gave the regulatory state enormous power to control the internet. Even worse, and this is in red. That wasn't like regular type. In red, they say, even worse, it killed thousands of good-paying jobs and stops you from getting cheaper and faster internet. And then now back to the black type. Now that President Trump's FCC chairman, Ajit Pai, has started repealing this regulatory monstrosity, now we hit bold type, liberals are kicking and screaming to stop him. Now back to regular type. We need Ajit Pai to restore a free and open internet. That's why I'm asking you to submit a formal comment to the FCC right now. Tell them to repeal Obama's internet takeover today. The internet was a hub of innovation and job creation for nearly 2 decades before Obama's takeover. Now, this is bold here and highlighted. Ending Obama's liberal internet legacy will restore the internet to an economic powerhouse that it once was. Back to regular type. But the liberals are fighting tooth and nail to keep the internet under government control. So please submit a formal comment to the FCC today. Tell them to unleash the power of the internet by repealing Obama's internet takeover right now.
Okay.
For freedom, comma, President of Freedom Works Foundation, Adam Brandon.
Okay.
Joel's head just exploded all over the wall.
No,
I'm gonna have to clean it up.
I'm fine.
I'll be back in 5.
I'm fine. I am fine. So I'm going to stay positive on this. This is why it is so important. Now, I assume after our discussion last week, we probably have about 6 Republican listeners still out there.
Yeah, we should have. Yeah.
Yeah. And, good on you. We love you.
Thanks for sticking with us.
Keep it up.
Because we want you along.
This is why you guys and gals that happen to be Republicans that care about this stuff are so important.
And
real quick,
let me say something that's going to piss off all the liberal people out there.
Okay.
we need Republicans.
Yeah, and this is my point.
Okay,
and,
okay.
And so I don't mean to downplay the support of all the wonderful like Democrats and liberals and progressive and whatever we like to call ourselves, out there. But it is extremely important that now that all of Congress and the executive branch is under Republican control, that Republican constituents voice their disapproval on issues like this if they care.
Yeah.
So if you care about having an internet where monopolists don't have inordinate amounts of power regarding pricing and content, then please make a comment. And ideally, particularly if you're a Republican, call your congressman. And the reason being is when you go do a comment on the FCC, we're all equal in the eyes of the FCC.
Supposed to be.
Right? Or at least we're supposed to be. So like Dennis and I, as Democrats and liberals and so on, there's not going to be any outweighed, vote, for lack of a better term, on the FCC ruling. But if you're a Republican and you call your local congressman and say, this is a big deal,
right?
I care, and you better not do this, they'll listen. And they're going to listen a heck of a lot more than if I call some congressman in Nebraska. And because Elijah Cummings here in Baltimore County, Maryland,
yeah, he's gonna vote.
He's gonna vote.
He agrees with us.
He agrees, right? Like it's the and even more important, the Democrats aren't in power, right? Like so, it really hinges on those Republicans that are listening to people like us and anybody else, right, who's writing or talking about this. Like it really hinges on you being involved. You are the linchpin in this.
Yeah, because I mean, when it comes down to, and I've said this before, I care about the issues. I don't care.
Yeah.
Because the way the Maryland primary system works, I have to register a certain way.
Yeah.
But I'm an independent. I voted Republican before. I vote for the person I think, will do the best for the country when it comes to, I'm an issues-based voter. I will take my issues, I'll prioritize them, and that's how I vote.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, it's been a while since I voted Republican because I think that they've been a little bit out to lunch lately, but there have been times when I voted Republican.
And there are Republicans that I, respect within Congress even. Right? Like, and I say that because there's very few people I respect in Congress.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so I like to draw the distinction. So I only call in a comment about political party in that it really is outweighed. Like the people that are Republicans right now have the ear of the government.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The rest of us have to yell really loud to get that ear. You can whisper, right? Because you're in the primary as far as they're concerned. And that's where they face their biggest political competition, is when they're going up against another Republican. So if you say, hey, I don't even have to take my vote to a Democrat, I just have to not vote for you. That makes a difference.
Yep.
So I'm off my soapbox.
So, and now I kind of like, because we covered the FreedomWorks thing, and the thing that really got me the most about that is
I didn't even yell during that.
You didn't. I was very proud of you.
I tried.
They don't really tell you anything about net neutrality.
No.
They just say words like Obama and liberal and rah rah rah. It's just
That's
to evoke
because
emotion.
They're shit eaters.
It's because they have no point. I would guarantee you they have no idea what this argument's even about.
Isn't that what I said?
Yeah, I think that's what shit eater means. You'll have to go look it up in the dictionary. Or on like Urban Dictionary.
Urban Dictionary. Yeah.
So okay, and now and to just give another example, there's a online paper called The Federalist. Are you familiar with The Federalist?
No,
Okay.
I've read The Federalist.
Okay. Well, Maureen Collins.
Based on the Federalist Papers. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of
loosely. But that's what they got the title from.
Yeah, it is. But it's, I mean, if you read, I don't think it's like, you know, I have more respect for Thomas Paine than that.
Well.
So, hey, Maureen Collins wrote this article, which basically kind of rips, why net neutrality is nothing more than a power grab.
Okay.
And
let's hear the argument.
Well, her two main points kind of get down to, and I'll put this in the show notes. And if you haven't noticed, I've redone how the show notes are done now.
Yeah, actually, nice.
I put timestamps in there to where if you want to just like kind of look at the show notes and go to a certain point in the podcast, you can. We prefer you listen to the whole thing, but I understand people get busy,
Yeah.
So, her first point is, and this is what she said. She said the Bush FCC adopted principles for preserving internet freedom in 2005, but they did not go through a formal rulemaking process. In 2008, the FCC went after Comcast for going against these principles, only to get struck down by the D.C. Circuit Court, where, quote, bad administrative law goes to die. So and she also goes on to say, she said, this entire process repeated itself under Obama administration. In 2010, the FCC adopted the Open Internet Order when, Verizon Wireless, actually, she's wrong. It wasn't wireless. It was just Verizon sued the commission. And again, the commission lost at the DC Circuit Court. So her real one premise she makes is like the courts are against this. It's kind of like that's where administrative law goes to die. But guess what? The D.C. Circuit Court left an opening for the FCC in that.
Yeah, it was pretty explicit
with
too.
Verizon. Yeah, that basically said that to designate ISP as Title II, that's a possibility under the law. Furthermore, the T2 designation survived a court challenge in the D.C. Circuit Court.
Was that 2014?
Yeah, actually, the net neutrality rules were 15. When Wheeler's rules went in, it went through the court, and the court said it's fine. So by her own logic, that must not be bad administrative law.
Yeah, previous attempts may have had flaws.
Right.
But the current iteration is just fine.
Right. Her whole argument on that the first point, the whole first point is completely blown out of the water because the D.C. Circuit Court said it's okay that it's Title II.
So when I was in grad school, we had a French term for this. Bullshit.
Yes, that's what it is. It is bullshit.
It's called
QED.
Bullshit. Yeah.
So her other point was that Title II is archaic because it was part of the 1934 Communications Act.
I'm sorry, but you're going to have to correct me on the date. Didn't Title II start in 1890?
Well, a common carrier goes way back.
Right.
But Title II is actually part of the 1934 Communications Act.
Okay.
So she's right there that, yes, it is part of that. But here's the thing. If things aren't Title II, they're Title I, information services, which is also defined in the 1934 Communications Act.
Yeah. Which is kind of, that's tricky.
Yeah. So
it's getting defined either way by the same thing.
If it's archaic, it's archaic. I mean, it's a wash. I think
you made this argument also on Twitter where it's like, law is a funny thing, right? Like, so technology changes all the time.
Right.
Law sometimes can stand around for a long time. Like, for example, theft and murder.
Yes.
We've had laws against for a long time. No one's going, those are archaic. That's an antiquated idea that we don't like people murdering and stealing
just
from
because
them.
The technology to murder people has advanced,
has evolved,
doesn't mean that laws against murder are bad.
So and I know that's a extreme argument, but the idea is basically arguing that a a law is old, therefore it's bad, is just, again,
ridiculous.
Bullshit.
Yes, it is. It is bullshit. To use that French term. It's bullshit.
Right? Like, I don't speak French fluently, but I'm pretty sure I got that one right.
And if you want to check it, it's Title 1, Section 3, subsection 20 of the 1934 Communications
And I suggest
Act.
You don't bother.
No, but I mean, it's there.
Yeah.
So,
well, no, I was going to say don't bother looking up bullshit in a French to English dictionary.
Okay.
It's not gonna work out.
Right. It's Title 2 it's bullshit Title 2. It's not bullshit Title 1. So, but I mean, to get back to Trump's, Sarah Huckabee, Sanders, Bush, Gore, Nixon, Johnson,
Clinton.
When they're changing their tact because of all of this,
right?
The reason we went on the tangent about what the Federalist is writing, what FreedomWorks is saying, is because there's kind of all of this opposition that's being kind of pumped into the Republican, news sources. Yet Republicans are seeing through all of that bullshit and are still supporting net neutrality.
Yeah, I mean, even if we went back to the earlier statistics you cited, despite all of this going through, even when the actual term net neutrality is used, 50% roughly, I mean, I think you said it was like 48, 49%. Of Republicans were still like, yeah, no, that's fine.
I don't think I'm picking on Republicans here. I'm just saying that they're
the party in power, so it is relevant
not only
to
that,
discuss.
But it's also the Democrats aren't getting attacked like this on. They're not getting fed false information or propaganda against net neutrality.
Yeah, and to be clear,
where Republicans are, they're getting FreedomWorks is feeding it to them. The Federalist, which they're not technically Republican, they're more of a libertarian organization, but they're still feeding this kind of obvious illogical argument.
Well, and let me make a quick distinction. So when the word propaganda is used, it has like a pejorative feel to it.
It does.
Because we typically associate it with state propaganda.
Correct.
This is corporate propaganda.
Yep.
This is vested interests that are the ISPs and other very influential, very wealthy individuals are saying, no. Make us wealthier by giving us more monopolistic power.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And I will agree that Title II is a blunt instrument.
Yeah.
Because
it's imperfect, but
it is, because and the courts have ruled it's the only instrument they have at their disposal.
Right. Which again is why I get to senators. Now I know this is where you and I, split hairs a little bit.
That's why I'm hesitant, really. And it's not because in a perfect world, yes. When they revised the 1934 Communications Act in 1996, they should have kind of really defined what a telecommunication. What do they mean by these different titles?
Yeah,
they kind of left it up to the FCC and gave the power to kind of classify things as they saw fit.
Which, again, it's an approach. It's not the worst approach.
I think it's okay.
It has the downside, and this is what Senator Thune's argument is. It has the downside of vacillating back and forth with the sway of the political tides.
Right. And the thing is that if you're going to define this in law, I think it needs to be defined by function and not technology. You need to sit there and kind of make a distinction between the medium of transmission and the services owned.
Well, and that's actually what they used to do with policy back in the old days. They were better at drawing broad rules.
Right, they were.
Right? Like if you look at
it was less to sort out. There wasn't as much. It was easier to kind of look at something and say, all right, there's 5 concepts here. Now with all the technology everywhere, things kind of bleed into one another, and sometimes it's harder to kind of sort out where the divisions lie.
Yeah, it's not an enviable task, right? For Congress to sort out. So I agree with Dennis's hesitation there. I just I do think it is a solvable problem, and I think eventually it will have to be solved legislatively.
I think I do, but I think I really just want tech expertise in the room when it gets solved, and I don't think that's going to happen.
No,
if it goes
unfortunately,
through-
that tech expertise is normally provided by the industry, which is worst case scenario.
I know. Well, the FCC has some technicians.
It does.
They have a lot of technicians. And that's
They're just
kind of
not consulted.
And that's why I'm kind of if I sound hesitant, it's because I am. It's like, yes, I like the idea of, in a perfect world, it'd be great if we could solve this legislatively. I'm not very confident that we can, though.
Well, in what I was going to say there is that the FCC's technicians, while I'm sure they are consulted in any proposed legislative process, there is an outsized voice for corporate interests in the legislative process, right? Like, so these technocrats over at the FCC, I actually think would be great to have involved in this discussion. And even having the industry at the table is not such a bad thing.
I think that's fine, as long as it's
but it should be a relatively even weighing of perspectives.
Yes. Yeah, well, yes, because they have they're a stakeholder in this.
Of course they are.
So that's fine. I don't think the ISPs are, should be kind of pushed totally out of the decision-making process.
Right.
I just think that, and for what I think they've they've committed a lot of sins when it comes to, open internet.
Yeah.
Every chance they've gotten to take advantage of their, power of their positional power that they have on the market, they've done it. They've taken advantage
and that's
of
the
it.
whole purpose of a regulatory body.
Exactly.
Right, is to check that power.
Right. And to me, I get the feeling that Ajit Pai and FreedomWorks and, maybe not necessarily it's not necessarily in the Republican legislators' hearts, but it's definitely in their wallets.
Well, it's also in their ears,
Yes.
right? Like if you're some, just regular schmo who all of a sudden became a congressman, right? I forget the guy's name, but on the Times Daily podcast. The Times.
I know the Times Daily, but I don't know
Yeah.
what you're talking about.
So the Times Daily podcast, they had a congressman today.
Oh, okay.
This is Wednesday, where they were talking about this congressman from Florida. I forget his name, but he threw his hat in the ring. He didn't really expect to win, but thought he'd give it a shot. The incumbent and then the person who was the heir apparent to the incumbent, both had political scandals blow up.
There you go.
Right before and all of a sudden he's in Congress. Now he's got to listen to all these issues. He doesn't know any of this stuff. He did whatever he did beforehand, but he wasn't like a technocrat.
Correct.
So now he's doing the best he can, right? Like, so assuming, good intent, right? Like, which is a stretch, but assuming good intent, they're just ill-informed. Right, like they don't know.
Right,
and so they've got someone who seems bright, has a pretty presentation. They slap in front of them. They say, "Hey, this is all the ways we can help you and the American public if we, just get rid of these pesky rules." And next thing we know, we're back to before we had the FDA, and people are getting ground up and
back in the jungle,
packaging meat plants, right? Like, so.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what happened with the healthcare thing,
of course,
because when they're sitting in Washington, they're in their bubble, they're not around their constituents. You got nothing but lobbyists, nothing but interest there. They go back home for recess. The public starts speaking to them. They come back and they're people. They see people in their communities hurting, wanting, needing health care. And then they come back and a few of them said, "I'm sorry, you know what? I can't vote for what is really a massive tax cut, not a health care bill." Because that's what it is. It's just, it was a tax cut. It's under the guise of trying to improve the healthcare system, but all it really does is take insurance from people and raise deductibles. So that's kind of what can happen here,
Of
too.
course it can.
If you let them know.
Well, even if you look at the poll you cited earlier with, hey, do you think Netflix should be throttled by, ISPs? Everyone says, oh, God, no, that's horrible.
That's a terrible idea.
Right? Do you support net neutrality?
I don't know about that.
I don't know, right?
Right.
Like, if you go look at polls about the...
It's like you're for babies, but against pregnancy.
If you go look at polls on Obamacare...
Oh, yeah.
They were much more negative than...
If you say ACA...
The ACA,
right.
Or extremely popular was the Medicaid expansion.
Exactly.
Well, what provided those, right? Like,
right. Well, I mean, that happened, and interesting, I think it's Kentucky or Kansas. Is it Kentucky? I can't remember.
I think it was Kentucky.
They changed the name of it
Yeah.
to... Oh, it is Kentucky, because it was Connect, K-Y, Nect. But it's really Obamacare.
That would have worked with Kansas as well.
Oh, did it? Maybe it is Kansas then.
No, they both have a K.
Oh, okay. Oh, but I think it's KY, like Connect for Kentucky.
Okay, well then strike what I said.
Okay.
I was just giving you shit.
No, I'm leaving that in. But I think what they did is they basically they pitched it. It's Obamacare.
Yeah, it's
but
the same thing.
But they just put their own branding on it. And if you went and
It's
polled,
really smart, frankly.
if you polled people in Kentucky and asked them about Connect,
I love it.
the approval rating was through the roof. If you said Obamacare, it was down in the dumps.
Well, it's because if I stood
Because they're getting emails from FreedomWorks.
Yeah, well, no, it is exactly that. It's exactly that. It's not just FreedomWorks.
It's not, but
they're evil, but they're not the only evil.
They're the majority of the evil.
They're most evil.
They're
right?
the Sauron.
Yeah, certainly.
At least.
I just assume
might be
they have a big tower with a flaming
with the eye. They do.
Yeah.
They do. They're watching
God,
us right now.
We're dorks.
This might not even air.
No, probably not. We're getting throttled.
Okay, so that's about all we got this week.
Yeah.
I want to thank you all for listening to Grounded Reason podcast, where tech and politics collide.
I'm sorry, I can't do it. I can't make it through you doing your
Hey, everybody. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe. Make sure that you tell your friends, family, if they want to, hear the garbage we're spewing on a weekly basis.
Stand on the street corner with a sandwich sign ringing a bell.
Yeah, we would appreciate a review.
Yeah.
In the iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. I think we're in your grocer's freezer.
Jesus Christ.
Apple Podcast app, Stitcher.
It's getting late.
What have you? Yeah, I know. So, I'm Dennis Restaro.
And this is Joel Reeves.
And we'll see you next time.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, everybody!